Okay, so the last video in the series about verb forms is going to be about the topic of infinitives and gerunds. What are those anyway? Okay, a gerund is when we say I like learning. Okay, when the verb ends in ing, just that part by itself is called a gerund. An infinitive means to plus the verb. So to learn, I like to learn. So those are examples of infinitives and gerunds, okay? So sometimes we can say, with I like, both these forms are correct. I like learning is correct, and I like to learn is correct. But it's not always the case that both forms are correct. Okay, but it's not always true that we can have ing and to with both forms. For example, okay, if we have this sentence, I imagine winning the lottery, it's correct to use the gerund form, the ing, but it's not correct to say I imagine to win the lottery. So sometimes we have to choose between one of these two forms, okay? And how do you know which one to choose? If you're not sure, I have a great tool on Blackboard that I think will help you. Go to Resources and go to Verb Forms, okay? And then here we have infinitives and gerunds, sentence sense, okay? This is a website that you can use, and it has a good explanation that you could read. Then in chart 7, it tells us which verbs need the gerund and which need the infinitive. So for example, if we choose the example we just saw, imagine, we put our mouse over it, and then in our box we see that it says I can imagine winning the lottery. So it tells us that it has to be a gerund. Okay, here's another example. I hope. With hope, it needs the infinitive. So Talitha hopes to graduate next spring. Okay, decide. They decided to go on vacations because decided takes the infinitive. So I hope you can see that in this box here is where it tells you the correct form. So this is something you could use when you're writing your at-home essays to help you learn the correct forms, or to help you check if you've used the correct forms. And then in the future, this is something that you could study or memorize. I think that would be good practice. Okay, so here's a couple more rules about infinitives and gerunds. Okay, the first is gerunds after prepositions. This is a good rule because it has no expression. So if you want to use after a preposition like after, before, to, or about, you should always use a gerund. So for example, we say, I will call you after arriving at the office. This means we can't say, I will call you after to arrive, or I will call you after arrive. Not correct. Okay, please have a drink before leaving. We don't say have a drink before leave. We always need to use the ing form after a preposition. Isn't that a great rule? I'm looking forward to meeting you. Do you object to working late? And Tara always dreams about going on holidays. Please notice that these forms are really acting like a noun. And in these sentences, instead of using the ing form, you could use a noun. Example, I will call you after arriving at the office. I will call you after my arrival, noun. Okay? Or I'm looking forward to meeting you. I'm looking forward to lunch. That's because the ing forms, the gerunds, act like nouns. So here's some examples where the ing forms are acting like nouns, and they're acting like subjects, in fact. Eating blackberries without washing them will make you ill. The subject of this sentence, as we know is eating, and here's the verb, will make you ill. Cooking is my hobby. Okay, so the gerund, noun, is acting like the subject. Feeling the wind is exhilarating. Feeling, the subject of the sentence. Eating, cooking, and feeling. Okay? Now, being is also a gerund. Okay? So we can start a sentence with being. Being a full-time mother is one of the highest salary jobs since the payment is pure love. Here's another example with being. Being happy never goes out of style. Being is acting like the noun in this sentence. Being rich is having money. Being wealthy is having time. So here we have many examples. Being, having, acting as nouns, as gerunds, okay? So, how does this work in our example sentences that we're trying to fix? Okay, let's look at the modal forms, which are, or the infinitive and gerund forms, okay? Here was a sentence from student paper. I like study. What's the problem here? The problem is, after like, we need an infinitive or gerund form. So we could say, I like studying, or I like to study. With like, they're both correct. Here's another example. I need make a schedule. Okay, so if we're not exactly sure about need, we could come back to our chart that I showed you on Blackboard, mouse over it, and see that need needs the infinitive. Okay, so here we would say, I need to make a schedule for appointments. Let's do the same with prefer. Let's go and check on our chart. Prefer. So it could either say, so this could either take a gerund or infinitive. I prefer to do, or I prefer doing. So let's see how this fits with our sentence. We could say, I prefer to take, or I prefer taking. Okay? I was trying, found more information. Okay? So let's check the try. I'm not sure if they have that. Yeah, that one is a little bit different. Okay? But we want to say, so this is a simple past form, okay? So we need to say, I was trying to find more information with the infinitive form, okay? Here's an example of the preposition. We got tired of drive every day. So after a preposition, remember, according to our rule with no exceptions, we always need a gerund after a preposition. So we got tired of driving every day. So let's look at these sentences. Be responsible is another important characteristic. We can't have the subject of a sentence be a base verb. It needs to be what? A gerund form. Okay, that's just like the last examples in our presentation. Being rich, being happy. Okay, those are the subjects. So we want to change this to being responsible is another important characteristic. Now, be careful, because these two words, being and been, sound similar, but they are different. This one is the past participle, and this will never be the subject of a sentence, okay? So this needs to be corrected towards being also. When do we use been? Well, maybe you remember, we use it with our have, has, and had, okay? So we use it when we say, I have been a teacher for 15 years, okay? Or she has been living here about 20 years, okay? So that's when we use the been form. That's part of the past participle with has or have. But the being is the one that acts like a subject. So I hope this section about infinitives and gerunds helped you with these interesting but difficult verb forms.